There's one detail in the Temple of Hathor that not a single guidebook mentions. It's in the crypt, a narrow underground corridor where you have to enter sideways, hunched over, almost squatting. Tourists are rarely allowed in. Cameras are useless here. The flash obliterates the relief, and without it, the darkness swallows everything. But if you hold a flashlight to the wall at waist level and sweep the beam horizontally, you can see something that's not in any catalog. A line, straight, mathematically flawless. It runs through the stone at a height of about 1.20 meters above the current floor and stretches not along just one wall. It passes through several rooms of the crypt, like a waterline on the hull of a sunken ship. Above this line is familiar Egypt. Reliefs, gods, cartouches, hieroglyphs, everything that is traditionally photographed and described. Below is another stone, a different texture, a different treatment. No images, no names, only a surface crafted with cold, inhuman precision. Two different handwritings, two different worlds, imprinted one within the other. Egyptology does not comment on this line. It does not appear in scholarly descriptions of the temple. It is not in Lepsius's drawings. It is not in Mariette's reports. It is not in modern works on Dendera. It is simply there and silent, but its silence speaks more eloquently than any hieroglyph. Because it says one thing: the floor they walk on here is not real. It is poured, leveled, aligned with something. But with what? With a level that is not on the plans, with a mark that no one recorded. Beneath the decorated Ptolemaic temple lies something that has no name in Egyptology. Not a foundation. The foundation is part of the project. And this is not part of the project. This is another project, older, more precise, and completely nameless. In Dendera, they walk on the ceiling and call it the floor. And no one asks what is below. There's an unspoken rule that permeates all of academic Egyptology. It's never explicitly stated, but it works flawlessly. It goes like this: everything beneath an Egyptian temple is part of that temple. The foundation, the basement, the crypt, the utility room. Everything below the floor is service, auxiliary, subordinate to what's above. A storage space for ritual utensils, a symbolic chamber, a place where priests stored figurines between ceremonies, a convenient, neat model. The temple is above, the basement is below. The basement belongs to the temple, period. But this model has a blind spot the size of an entire civilization. It doesn't allow for one possibility, that the structure beneath the temple is older than the temple itself, that it wasn't built as its basement, but existed before it, that the temple was built on top without knowing, or knowing but not understanding, what exactly lies beneath. The difference between a foundation and the preceding floor is fundamental. A foundation is designed along with the building. It is part of the design. But if a structure made of a different material, processed by a different method, executed with a different precision and bearing no signs linking it to the structure above is discovered beneath the building, it is not a foundation. It is what was there before. It is a preceding floor. However, such a term does not appear in the professional dictionary of Egyptology. It is not prohibited. It simply does not exist. Because if we admit that structures of unknown origin and age lie beneath the temples of the New Kingdom, more than one temple crumbles. Chronology crumbles. The entire vertical structure of dates on which the discipline rests begins to sag, not under the pressure of new facts, but under the pressure of one simple question: what if the floor we stand on is someone else's ceiling? Egyptology does not answer this question. It is more effective. It has made it impossible to ask it within the confines of academic language. No term, no phenomenon, no problem. The rule works. It's been working for a century and a half, but the line in the Dendera crypt doesn't know this rule, and neither does the stone beneath it. There's a place in Saqqara where you descend a sloping gallery and feel the air change with every step. It becomes heavier, denser, as if the stone itself were breathing down on you. This is the Serapeum, an underground complex carved into the rock at a depth where sunlight no longer exists, even as a memory. The official version, the burial place of the sacred Apis bulls. 24 niches, each contains a granite box. Each weighs between 60 and 80 tons. The lid is a separate monolith, weighing up to 30 tons. The box's dimensions are such that a car could fit inside. But the interior walls of these boxes are polished to a level where deviations from the ideal plane are mere thousandths of a millimeter. This isn't the level of ritual. This isn't the level of funerary tradition. This is the level of the optical industry. Copper chisels, which Egyptology offers as tools, are several times softer than granite. They can't cut it. They can't polish it. They can't even scratch it to get a straight line. But today we're not talking about the boxes. Enough has been said about them. We're talking about the gallery, about how it doesn't end where the fence for tourists stands. Auguste Mariette, who discovered the Serapeum in the 1850s, kept diaries of the clearing. He recorded branches so densely packed with sand and rubble that it took months to clear them. But behind some of the rubble, he found not a wall, but a void, a space that stretched on. He couldn't get there. He didn't have the resources. He didn't have the time. He described it and moved on. 170 years have passed since then. No one has returned to those branches. No one has cleared that rubble. No one has checked what's behind them. And here's what's remarkable. These branches don't appear on modern plans of the Serapeum. Mariette described them, but they don't exist on maps. It's as if the diaries of one of the founders of Egyptian archaeology had simply stopped being read. The Serapeum isn't a bull cemetery. It's an underground engineering structure, the boundaries of which have not been established. Only the part conveniently shown is known. The rest is hidden behind rubble, in the dark, in a silence that no one intends to disturb. Beyond the back wall of the Temple of Seti, the first at Abydos, the ground drops away. Not metaphorically, but literally. The ground level drops sharply, and from the chasm emerge granite monoliths so large that a human looks like a typographical error next to them. This is the Osireion, the most awkward structure in all of Egypt. It's awkward because it doesn't fit anywhere. The blocks, up to 200 tons each, fit together without mortar, with tolerances that preclude manual processing on such a scale. Not a single inscription, not a single cartouche, not a single image, nothing. Bare granite, laid with a precision that makes the interior silent. Egyptology dates the Osireion to the era of Seti I, the 13th century BC. But the 13th century BC is the Temple of Seti, which stands nearby. Painted, decorated, inscribed, covered in texts from floor to ceiling. But the Osireion is silent. Stylistically, it has nothing in common with the age of Seti. It's closer to the valley temple at the foot of the Sphinx, an architecture that itself is an unanswered question. And here's what's important to understand. The Osireion wasn't built as an underground structure. It wasn't designed in a pit. It stood on the surface, once upon a time. Everything that surrounds and covers it today is layered. Sand, soil, debris, the cultural layer of centuries that passed since it. The Osireion didn't sink. The world around it rose, centimeter by centimeter, century after century, until it covered it entirely. And then Seti came, and he built his temple right on top, unaware or suspecting but not understanding what exactly lay beneath. Today, the Osireion stands in water. The groundwater of the Nile has filled its chambers. Granite blocks sink into a murky greenish liquid, and no one knows where the bottom ends. Water here is more than just an obstacle. She is the guardian. Everything below the waterline remains unexplored, unscanned, unmeasured. The Osireion, a building that stood on the surface, was buried by time, flooded by water, and is now officially considered the basement of a temple built millennia later. If there's an entire floor here underground, how much more lies deeper, where neither lantern nor question can reach? Every photograph of Giza is taken from the bottom up. The camera is tilted toward the peaks. The lens captures the faces of the pyramids reaching into the sky. Tourists tilt their heads back. Drones rise higher. Satellites film from above. All attention is upward, always upward. But the Giza anomaly isn't at the summit. It's at the base. It's beneath the feet of everyone who stands on the plateau, and none of them look down. The bedrock on which the pyramids stand is engineered. It's not natural topography. It's not a random plateau conveniently placed on top of heavy structures. It's an engineered platform. 13 hectares of rock mass are leveled with a deviation of less than 2 centimeters across the entire area. To give you an idea of the scale, modern building codes for foundation slabs allow up to 5 centimeters per 100 meters. The Giza Plateau is more precise than any modern standard, and it was leveled before the pyramids. Not for them, before them. This isn't part of the pyramid design. It's a pre-existing condition. Someone has carved 13 hectares of limestone rock with a precision that requires not just tools, but a control system. Levels, benchmarks, a method for maintaining horizontal alignment over an area impossible to see from a single vantage point. And here, a gap arises, one that is rarely discussed. Egyptology views the pyramids as an object. Construction begins when the first block is laid. It ends when the capstone is set. But the platform is not part of this model. It is outside the frame, before the frame. Its existence is implied, but not discussed, because to discuss it would be to admit that someone, before the pyramid builders, carried out work here, the scale and precision of which is in itself an engineering feat. And if the platform is not part of the pyramids, then it is part of something else, something that was here before. And if the surface is carved with such precision, what about what lies beneath? Giza taught the world to look up. 3 pyramids pointing skyward are the perfect attention grabber, but the most important things are below, where the limestone ends and silence begins. Between the pyramid of Khafra and the Sphinx, there's an inconspicuous area surrounded by a low fence. Tourists pass by without stopping. Nothing of interest. A flat stone, dust, a sign in Arabic. But beyond this fence lies a vertical shaft more than 30 meters deep. 3 levels, each lower than the previous. At the very bottom is a chamber. In the chamber is a basalt sarcophagus set on a stone island surrounded by water. The site is known as the Tomb of Osiris. Zahi Hawass showed it off for cameras in the early 2000s. He descended. Shine a flashlight. Say a few words about its ritual significance. Climbed back up. That's all. No full-scale archaeological study has been conducted. The water at the bottom hasn't been pumped out. The sarcophagus hasn't been opened. The walls of the chamber haven't been studied. What lies beyond them is unknown. 30 meters down, and silence. But the shaft isn't the only thing. Beneath Khafra's dam lies a tunnel. It leads in the direction of the Sphinx, or away from the Sphinx. The direction is unknown because the tunnel has not been fully explored. Its length is unknown. Its purpose is undetermined. Its existence is documented, and access to it is closed. And in the 1970s, something happened that people prefer to forget. An American research institute conducted a seismic scan of the ground around the Sphinx. The instruments recorded anomalies. There are cavities under the front paws, not random voids in the rock, not karst caverns, regularly shaped cavities, chambers. The results were published. The data entered scientific circulation, and then the end. Further research was not permitted. No new scans were conducted. Access to the area beneath the Sphinx remains closed to this day. 3 objects under a single plateau. A vertical shaft with a flooded chamber. A horizontal tunnel of unknown length. Regularly shaped cavities under the paws of the Sphinx. All 3 were recorded by instruments or visually. All 3 are documented, and none have been fully explored. Giza isn't 3 pyramids on a cliff. It's a carved platform with an underground network about which we know exactly as much as we've been allowed to know. No more. There is no conspiracy. There is no secret room where gray-haired men decide what to hide from humanity. Reality is simpler, and precisely because of this, more effective. The mechanism that turns inconvenient facts into silence operates without malice. It operates on bureaucratic inertia, on habit, on a funding structure that rewards confirmation and punishes doubt. This mechanism has 3 steps. Step 1 is a label. An object that doesn't fit into the chronology is given a placeholder word. Not an explanation, just a placeholder. The Osireion is a symbolic tomb. The Serapeum is a cult burial site. The underground chambers of Giza are auxiliary spaces. The shaft with the sunken sarcophagus is a ritual structure. The word ritual in Egyptology serves the same function as the word metaphor in literary criticism. It closes the question without answering it. Once an object is labeled ritual, asking why becomes inappropriate. Ritual requires no engineering justification. It is its own cause. Step 2 is access restriction. The bottom of the Osiris Shaft is flooded, and no one is pumping it out. The side galleries of the Serapeum are blocked, and no one is clearing them. The tunnel under Khafra's dam is closed, and no one is passing through. The crypts of Dendera are only partially open, and the lower levels are inaccessible. The wording is impeccable, for preservation, for safety, as part of restoration. Temporary. This temporary has been going on for decades. Step 3 is substitution. the most elegant. Lack of research is passed off as the absence of a phenomenon. There is no evidence of underground levels because no one has excavated. No evidence of machine processing because no one has commissioned petrographic analysis. No data means no problem. The circle is closed. Silence refers to silence. A conspiracy is not needed for this mechanism to work. What is needed is a system in which the grant goes to the person who approves the textbook, and not to the person who asks a question that will force the textbook to be rewritten. 25 centuries ago, a Greek descended steps that no longer exist. Herodotus, traveler, historian, the man who is commonly called the father of history when he says convenient things, and a naive dreamer when he says inconvenient ones, he arrived at the Fayum oasis and saw a structure that amazed him more than the pyramids. He called it the Labyrinth. 3,000 rooms, 1,500 above ground. He walked through them himself, room after room, and described them as something surpassing everything he had ever seen in his life. And 1,500 underground, where he was not allowed. The priests said, "Sacred crocodiles and kings rest below." Herodotus wrote it down, did not insist, left. 400 years later, Strabo walked the same path. Roman geographer, pedant, a man more inclined to understate than to exaggerate. He described the same structure. The scale confirmed, the details matched. He mentioned the underground levels separately as something existing beyond access. 100 years later, Pliny the Elder, again the labyrinth, again the scale, again the reference to floors extending underground. 3 authors, 3 eras, 3 different cultural contexts, the same object and the same detail, repeated like a refrain. The lower floors exist, but they don't let you in. Herodotus was kept out by the priests. Strabo, tradition. Pliny, it doesn't matter who anymore. Something else is important. 25 centuries have passed. Empires have changed. Rome has collapsed. Europe has been born and grown old. Archaeology as a science has emerged. Man has entered space, descended to the ocean floor, split the atom. And yet, the lower floors of the labyrinth are still off limits. Only now, instead of priests in white robes, there are officials from the Ministry of Antiquities with seals and forms. The wording has changed. The result is the same. For 25 centuries, underground Egypt has spoken one word: no. In 2008, a team arrived in Hawara that had no intention of believing Herodotus, Strabo, or anyone else. The Belgian-Egyptian expedition, known as Mataha, brought with them the only witness who can't lie: ground-penetrating radar, a device that sends electromagnetic pulses into the ground and records the reflections. It doesn't care about myths. It doesn't care about textbooks. It doesn't care about grant committees. It records the difference in density of the medium. That's all. Rock, void, rock. Wall, cavity, wall. It has no lie. The area south of the pyramid of Amenemhat III. On the surface, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. A flat, sun-baked desert. Not a single stone, not a hill, not a hint of anything but sand and baked clay. A place you could drive past without even turning your head. The ground-penetrating radar started working, and the sand started talking. At a depth of several meters, a massive structure, walls, chambers, corridors, not chaotic karst voids, geometrically correct architecture, right angles, parallel lines, a repeating modular system, the scale colossal. The contours matched descriptions that were 25 centuries old. Herodotus wasn't exaggerating. Strabo wasn't mistaken. Pliny wasn't retelling rumors. 3 ancient authors spoke the truth, and the instrument confirmed it with a precision beyond the human eye. The expedition's results were compiled into a scientific report. Coordinates were recorded. Depths were measured. Contours were plotted on a map. Everything was according to protocol. Everything was within the framework of scientific methodology. Not a single assumption, not a single conjecture, just data. Nothing happened next. The Egyptian authorities refused to issue a permit for excavations. No grant was allocated. The expedition was halted. The global scientific community remained silent. Not a single major Egyptology department demanded a continuation. Not a single top-tier scientific journal put it on the cover. The data exists. The report is available. The coordinates are known to anyone who can read. Beneath the sands of Hawara lies a structure with 3,000 rooms, verified by a device that cannot lie. And the only response it received was silence. Not a refutation, not a discussion. Silence, because to refute is to admit existence, and silence means it does not exist. 5 dots, scattered across the Nile Valley. Different eras if the textbooks are to be believed. Different purposes if the labels are to be believed. Different contexts, different names, different pages in the catalogs. But if you remove the labels and lay these dots on a single map, not horizontally, but vertically, a pattern emerges that isn't found in any academic atlas. Dendera, a cutting line in a crypt. Beneath a decorated Ptolemaic temple lies an unmarked stone from another era and a different workmanship. Serapeum, subterranean galleries that don't end where maps end. Voids behind rubble, described by Mariette and forgotten by everyone after him. Osireion, 200-ton granite monoliths without a single inscription, buried under layers and flooded. A building that stood on the surface and was swallowed by time. Giza, a processed platform with a precision beyond modern standards, a 30-meter vertical shaft. A tunnel of unknown length, regularly shaped cavities beneath the paws of the Sphinx. Hawara, 3,000 chambers beneath the empty surface of the desert, confirmed by ground-penetrating radar, described by 3 ancient authors, inaccessible. 5 objects, and each one shares 3 characteristics. First, all are located below what is today considered the floor, not in basements built alongside the upper structures, but deeper, on floors that were not designed as part of what is visible on the surface. Second, all exhibit stonework that defies the technological capabilities of the eras to which they are officially assigned. Granite processed with machine precision, basalt polished to optical tolerances, monoliths transported to spaces where it is physically impossible to transport them using the methods described. Third, all are either unexplored, partially explored, or closed to access. A full comprehensive report on the underground levels exists for none of the 5 objects. 1 coincidence is a fluke. 2 is a curious detail. 3 is a trend. But 5 objects with 3 identical characteristics is not a coincidence. It's a pattern, systematic, reproducible, geographically distributed. It points not to isolated anomalies, but to a unified underground infrastructure, traces of which appear at every point where someone dares to dig a little deeper than is permitted. A map of this infrastructure doesn't exist. not because it's impossible to compile, but because no one has set such a task. Civilizations typically strive for their past. It's instinctive to dig, to read, to understand. Every tablet found, every layer of soil uncovered is a cause for celebration. We celebrate discoveries. We fund expeditions. We name eras by the color of pottery and the shape of arrowheads. The entire past is ours. We want it. We seek it. And that's all. The coordinates of Hawara are known. The depth has been measured. The contours have been mapped. The scanning technology exists. The excavation technology, even more so. Funding for such a project, on a global scientific scale, is negligible. And yet, stop. A complete, unconditional, inexplicable stop. Not a refusal, not an argument, not a discussion. Simply, stand still, as if something within the decision-making system has hit a wall that cannot be addressed out loud. Maybe it's not about bureaucracy. Maybe it's not about Egyptian politics. Maybe it's not about the struggle for control of monuments. Maybe it's about what might end up underneath. The ground floor is unmarked, 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 stone-crafted to tolerances that modern engineering struggles to achieve. Structures that cannot be carbon-dated because they contain no carbon, no organic matter, no wood, bone, or tissue, only mineral, only geometry, only a scale that chronology cannot comprehend. If this floor exists, and the 5 dots on the map indicate it doesn't ask a question about Egypt. It asks a question about us, about our place, about our uniqueness, about the confidence with which we consider ourselves the pinnacle, because the pinnacle doesn't build the foundations for those who come after. The pinnacle is the end, and these structures look like a beginning, like a foundation upon which everything we know has grown. And if this foundation doesn't belong to us, then to whom? Perhaps the silence surrounding underground Egypt isn't negligence, not laziness, not a lack of funding. Perhaps it's instinct, that same ancient, pre-human one. Don't look into places from which there may be no return to the previous worldview. Every day, thousands of people walk the Giza plateau. They buy water from merchants. They mount camels. They smile into their phone cameras, palms held out so that it appears the pyramid fits between their fingers. Beneath their feet lie a 30-meter vertical shaft, a flooded chamber, and a basalt sarcophagus on a stone island untouched by any modern hand. They don't know. They haven't been told. And there's no one to tell. Every year, dissertations on Egyptology are defended at universities around the world. Students write about the ritual significance of objects whose internal polish exceeds the tolerances of optical manufacturing. They use the word ceremonial as a key that opens any door and simultaneously closes all others. Not one of these dissertations contains the word ground-penetrating radar. Not one contains the word petrography. Not one asks a question beginning with the word under. Somewhere in the Fayum oasis, the sun sets over a flat, featureless desert. The wind carries sand. Sand settles on clay. Clay lies on stone. And stone remembers. 3,000 rooms, 1,500 of them are below. They are not waiting to be discovered. They are already open. Herodotus saw the upper ones and described the lower ones. Strabo confirmed. Pliny recorded them. Ground-penetrating radar has traced their contours. All is done. all is known. One piece of paper remains, one signature, one permit from an official in an air-conditioned office who has probably never stood on this sand in his life and has no idea what he is prohibiting. Stone is patient. It's had time to learn. 4.5 billion years of crystal lattice is not a substance that can be rushed. Granite waited for the planet to cool. It will wait for humanity to mature. Sand, too. It has sheltered these floors for 25 centuries. It will shelter them for another 25 if necessary. And we continue to walk around the top floor. Photograph the ceiling and call it the sky. Read the walls and think this is the beginning of a story, though it could be only the final chapter, written over 1,000 previous ones, erased and silenced. Under our feet is a floor. Under that floor is another floor. Under that, yet another. And from each of them, we could see everything differently. But for that, we need to do one thing, the only thing, the simplest and most impossible. Look down.